everyone. Welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on the lore, the narrative, and the big ideas of the galaxy far, far away. I am back. I am healthy once again. Matthew coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto. As always, I'm joined from across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. I always get thrown off whenever we just skip a whole
Yep.
week of this. I don't know why. And I even had last Monday, I did a different recording because it's like, oh, well, I have some time. So it's like I decided to take this time and do another recording with somebody else.
Nice.
Not for this show, different show.
Yeah.
I'm a man of many hats, but it still throws me off. It still throws me off. Like I almost forgot to do the notes and it's like my routine breaks.
Workflows. There we
I
go.
know, right?
Once that's published, whatever that is, feel free to plug it. There we go. But
Oh
this week,
yeah, it's already out. It's called Warhammer and Weebs, which is
interesting.
a
All right.
show. A friend of mine, Kamara, is my co-host.
Mhm.
She's a Warhammer fan,
Nice.
which is another one of the big sci-fi franchises.
Mhm.
Which is it's kind of a game.
Yeah, like
Figure,
the physical board game thing, but not
and
quite a
there's
board
a
game.
whole lot of lore to it. You think Star Wars got lore? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Warhammer's got makes the Bible look like a child's book. So she basically
Nice.
tells me a certain aspect of Warhammer lore, and I kind of listen to it and kind of respond with my commentary, and it's great. We're about to release another episode soon.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Right on. Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, it's pretty much all lore all the time. That
Pretty
one,
much. Oh yeah.
like millennia, which is fun. But speaking of lore, let's dive into this week, because it is no accident that the design of the Jedi Council Archives behind us up here is based on the famed Trinity College library in the Trinity College in Dublin. In the real world, go look it up. Yeah, it's clearly inspired by that. Now, since the galaxy of Star Wars particularly reflects our own Western world, its communication is heavily reliant on documents, files, even books, paper books in Star Wars. Who knew? Now, like us, the cultural heritage bestowed on and forgotten by the late Republic, the Empire, the New Republic, and the First Order is contained in these texts. And whether that heritage comes in the form of lore and stories of meaning making, or historical records and technical information. And even the habit of producing texts, written correspondence, news broadcasts, and other messages is the work of cultural inheritance. It's the cultural inheritance actually getting to work, I should say. And this habit continues in our world and theirs, even as digital and video technology have noticeably altered our perceptions and capabilities and other ways that we communicate and store information. So this week, we're looking at the in-universe texts of Star Wars, what they are, what they do, why they are, etc. And we'll get into that in just a bit. First up, get the plugs out of the way. You can follow us on Blue Sky at Iron Canon, ironcanon.biscuit.social, and if you prefer Instagram, Twitter, etc., hop on over to at the SW. They're also on Blue Sky. Nothing's going on there. If you prefer audio, we are on, for podcasts on audio, we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So just search Ion Canon Podcast in the podcatcher of your choice, not just Spotify and Apple. We're all over the place there. Of course, we are proud part of the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network here on the Underworld YouTube channel. We have memberships. We have YouTube memberships. We have super chats. Please do comment down below whenever you want. We'll get into it, get to your comment in the flow of the conversation. If you super chat us, we're willing to provide support the network and the channel, then we will interrupt whatever we're saying and get right to it. And of course, there's the Underworld Discord server. Check the link in the description below to get in on all the conversations about Mando and Grogu, about Maul Shadow Lord, about everything happening in the video game world, and all sorts of things. And Joel, what's been happening in the event-wise in the Discord?
We have mostly just been rewatching episodes of Maul Shadow Lord as they come out. Last week we did
Yep.
episodes 3 and 4. And this week we're gonna do 5 and 6 because that's what's come out this week.
That's
So
right.
we're all just checking in on Shadow Lord and having a good old grand old time.
There we go. Yeah, we're going to talk about Shadow Lord also today in a minute because it came out today, so might as well chat about it. on Wednesday, we're going to keep talking about Shadow Lord because Chris Abbott and I, we only have one comic book to read, but there's a comic book coming out this week. A Star Wars comic book coming out this week. Ethan Sachs' Galaxy's Edge tie-in Echoes of Empire kicks off the new kind of going back into the Imperial Republic, the new Republic, the Rebel Alliance Imperial era, I believe, and talking about how what's Leia and Han doing on Batuu there. So check that out, and we're also gonna talk more about more Shadow Lord because there's lots more to talk about there. So check that out. That's right here on the Underworld YouTube channel at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. This and most Wednesday nights. This Wednesday night, this is what we are chatting about. All right. Let's dive in. We didn't have, I guess, too much prepared for our week in Star Wars, but all that to say, Mando Grogu.
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, actually, I didn't think of something for Week in Star Wars, but I mean, I guess this is my Week in Star Wars, right? Let's just do the trailer. Yeah, Mando and Grogu trailer, the final trailer, the final one, and now a bunch of TV spots. Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, at this point, you don't really sell me. I'm already good to go.
Yeah.
But I do think it continues to harbor home a few things I've been kind of noticing for a while, and I think that just kind of hammers it home of yeah, I think might be called The Mandalorian Grogu, but I get the feeling this is probably going to be more Grogu's movie than anybody else's if I had to pick a character who's going to have it go through an arc this season, which is always interesting to talk about because just see, I'm doing the thing now. Damn, I'm doing the thing. This movie, but we have been talking about this with others for a while as we did our Mando rewatch, at least season 1 and 2. And it's interesting how Mando and Grogu are always together, but Grogu sometimes just doesn't do much. He'll do sometimes a special thing, but other times he'll just be cute in the little basket or just not do anything at all. And I think we're about to see now him really starting to come into his own and oh, now he has to be the one who protects Din from the bad guys and the Empire and the Hutts and all that. So it's really starting to show just kind of him finally taking initiative in his own life again, and kind of despite being still a small little guy, and being an equal partner to Din as the two of them do their adventures together and whatnot. The second thing I'm excited to see, and I think I noticed it a little bit in a TV spot more with this, but I might be confused. It might be in the trailer. I'm never quite sure. They always add just a little extra. Is it looks like we're gonna have a moment in the movie, maybe it's the third act or not. I don't know. You never know. Of the New Republic coming in as the cavalry, right? You see all the X-wings and the Y-wings and the little man and the shuttles coming in, and I wonder if there's going to be a moment in the movie where it's oh no, the Empire / Hutts are the Mando and Grogu cornered. It's just them and an army. What are they gonna do? And then here come the New Republic cavalry arriving, and then yay! And then it's Mando and X-wings in the sky, and Mando on the ground doing his thing, and it's probably gonna be great. But no, I'm excited. I got my tickets purchased. I am seeing it in IMAX.
Nice.
And can't wait to see it May 22nd. I've already got my tickets purchased and ready to go.
There we go. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm already in not worrying about TV spots mode. Also, I don't know if they're going to show us too much different, but
Probably
appreciate
not.
your insights, Joel. But I'm like, all right, going blind, and here's the movie. There we go. It is actually happening. Can we declare the Rayside rule unnecessary at this point? Maybe still haven't gone into, still not sitting in the theater with the movie actually starting halfway through a bag of chocolate bars.
Bob Iger comes out and says "fool you," and then he just walks away.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Go well.
A teaser for well, it turns out it's Avengers Endgame instead. There we go. Yeah, I mean that's now that you mention it, something that does need to happen is Grogu needs to become more of a character in his own right. He is a character. He's there, especially oddly enough. I mean, the Book of Boba Fett episode with
Yeah, that's
Luke.
true.
I mean, that's the biggest character growth he goes through we've seen yet. Period. So yeah, I mean, it's also hard because he doesn't speak basic or any kind of language as far as we know, and so
He's
I
still a
mean, do we?
baby, or at least
Well, yeah, yeah,
or at least a
but
toddler. At least a toddler.
but toddlers can start to speak language, right? That's the thing. So
True.
we'll see. I mean, and aren't and he's reacting and emoting consciously. So I think he's choosing. Like he make you this choice. If he chooses, he chooses Din over Luke, right? He chooses the uh the mithril over the sword. Um, the Beskar mithril over Yoda's lightsaber. So yeah, I mean, language. It'll be weird, but I guess in a movie that's where we need it, where it makes the most sense to let him say his first words. I guess.
If we don't get his first word, at the very least, the movie budget will probably mean for some very good puppetry. I think we're about to see some really good. You'll believe a puppet can emote kind of situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question. Grogu, this is an interesting kind of side topic. Is how much is Grogu a character? And he is. I'm not saying he's not, but how much is he also a marketing kind of mind?
I mean, it's both. I think the answer is both. Clearly, I think in the context of the show, it depends episode by so like season 1 and 2, which I kind of lump together. He's very much the MacGuffin. He's the thing everybody wants.
Yeah.
Book of Boba Fett, you do get to see. I agree. You do get to see that Grogu kind of come into his own a little bit more. Basically making the choice, and we're starting to see kind of him really like with his training and whatnot, kind of like finally starting to like not only just come into his own, but I think kind of like heal from the years of trauma after Order 66 and being all by himself. I think I think he might be 50, but I do kind of wonder to get into some odd psychological stuff. Is there's some age regression happening because you went through a traumatic experience. Stuff happens to you after that. Season 3, there are signs of him getting his independence. Like, there's some episodes where like he goes to rescue Din when he's in the mines of Mandalore. There's the finale where he gets to be in the robot skeleton and kind of partake in the battle for a little bit. And of course, the final moment where like he's holding back the thing. And then other times he's just kind of there. But you do see kind of more him coming into his own, like those little moments where it's like, he does the dart test on with the Mando cult for a little bit, where he's like giving that Mando kid kind of like a dart contest, and Grogu wins.
Right? Yeah.
So you get little snippets of that. My guess is this movie, in an odd sense, is the culmination of all those things. Where it's like, okay, time to really show Grogu. Have to rescue his dad because there's that one scene in the trailer where Din's running and like he's like I'll be right behind you, and if you know your movie stuff, it's like you're never right behind you. They're getting separated, so it's like now Grogu, and you got those scenes in the trailer where you see Grogu looks like by himself and he's meditating, so it looks like there's gonna be a whole moment in the movie where it's like, yeah, Grogu's got a time to rescue Din from whatever he's gotten into. So I do think out here the marketing ploy, of course. I don't think we can deny that, but I do think the show itself has definitely had its highs in making him a character. Maybe not every episode, but certainly there's a through.
And he's a title character in this now, right? So that's also a big change because it was the Mandalorian. And I mean, in season 3, the Mandalorian in question is Bo-Katan, but Mandalorian now it's the Mandalorian and Grogu. So, I mean, even then, I brought this up thinking just to be excited about getting tickets, like IMAX 3D Scotiabank, IMAX 3D, May 21st, The 3:50 showing. We gotta book a day off work. There we go. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. Gonna have a gang all come out. So yeah, looking forward to seeing a Star Wars in the theater, a new Star Wars in the theater. Oh yeah, not next week, May 4th. I'm seeing Rogue One in the theater. But
Ooh,
yeah,
nice.
seeing a new Star Wars in a theater. What a concept. Hasn't happened in 8 years, right? Yeah, no, 6 years, 7 years, 7 years. Math, yeah, hasn't happened in 7 years. So I don't know. Yeah, I haven't, and I haven't had a YouTube podcast when a movie's coming out. This is our first film. So there we go,
I
Joel.
know.
We're
Wild.
gonna have to join the podcast, Harriet, and just talk about it all the time. There you go. Things that come up in our own way, the way we do it here on Iron Cannon. Speaking of the podcast, Harriet, we do have some eyes on screen stuff to chat about. Again, as mentioned above, Maul Shadow Lord episodes 3 to 6, catching up on it, but especially today's episodes 5 and 6 because they're fresh in my mind. Got to chat about it. I gotta say, this show is really giving me what I want. I mean, I've mentioned this lots of times that my it's almost tied with Darth Plagueis for my favorite Legend story is Dark Times, that comic run, and it's all about Jedi being on the run and having to figure out, okay, do we stick to our principles or do we join in with some less savory characters and some utterly unsavory characters like a former Sith Lord maybe? That doesn't happen in Dark Times, but in Maul Shadow Lord, Devin, I mean, she's definitely tempted to join Maul. She effectively does in almost by the end of episode 6, fights with Maul against the Inquisitor, against what's his name, Marok. So yeah, that's the angle that I'm super intrigued by, seeing, and especially these last 2 episodes that we saw more of, the Master Padawan lurking in the shadows there. Speaking of shadows, right? Theme there. So, especially when the boot of the Empire is down, that's when the rubber meets the road for Jedi after Order 66. I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road for everybody, including Maul, including Lawson, and just to see the inevitable finally happen, right? The thing that Lawson is trying to avoid, and of course, Two Boots calls it in, thinking, "Oh yeah, this is fine. This is great. He's following protocol. Why not?" I hope he's pleased. Boom, wanted. That's fine. So yeah, this is just giving. It's firing on all cylinders, and I think it's giving me what I want as a guy who loves the space wizardry. I'm sure it's giving other folks who love the underworld and the action. I like that stuff too. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's showing why. I mean, I've been anticipating this show. Frankly, I'm probably going to enjoy it more than Mandalorian and Grogu, even though that's a film. In this first half of the year, it's really digging into those questions of what does it mean to be a Jedi in the dark times? What does it mean to connect to the Force in the dark times? Even Marok, right? You see him sensing Devin in which direction her and Riley have gone. The different ways. We haven't seen much of that. We've seen some of it. We haven't seen much of it. Certainly haven't seen it on screen. So, because people like the underworld, like the sexy things of the underworld and the rebellion and the evil boot of the Empire. But here's my mystical magic force wizards with their laser swords doing their thing. So yeah, here for it all day. Joel, what are your thoughts on especially episodes 5 and 6, but 3 to 6 overall?
Yeah, I mean, this show has just been one hit after the other. I mean, this is very much a serialized show, definitely. I'm kind of glad it's coming out 2 in a row. I think
Yeah,
I've been happy about that, and I
the
think it's
sweet spot. That's the sweet spot.
a little sweet spot there for sure. Um, and yeah, I'm loving the characters. It's funny how I'm gonna be honest. I think this is one of those shows where it's like Maul's not even the best character I think of the show so far.
Yeah.
Like I think it's Devin. I like Riley. I really like
Hmm.
when Devin and Riley are together. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Like they got the
I'm shipping them a little bit.
yeah, me too. Or at the very least, it's like it's kind of cool. It's like oh, he's a her age who's not a
Hmm.
Jedi. It's kind of fun. Um,
Hmm.
like, oh, good to find someone her own age to be around. It's very
Hmm.
interesting. Actually, I was surprised we got to see Riley's mom too, because she's
Yeah.
working for the Empire, and seeing
Hmm.
kind of the very domestic side of Star Wars. We got like, the dad just trying to make a good situation a bad one. And clearly, there's something about the Empire they disagree on. She's working for it, he's not.
Hmm.
Um, I like that. Riley's now with Devin and Maul. I'm kind of curious if like Maul's like,
Yeah.
oh, 2 children. A time to mold the youth, as they say.
Hmm.
Um, also interesting, we're starting to see some cracks in Maul's team with those 2 Mando guys who are like,
Yeah.
hey, where's the money? Like that's interesting. Like,
Hmm.
oh, I guess they're not about honor or the dark saber. They're about where's the money. Makes me wonder, like, where'd they come from? Are they even Mandos? Like, are they real Mandos like Rook
Hmm.
Cast is? Like, 'cause she's a diehard Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Um, um, it's really cool just seeing just kind of seeing just the Empire show up and just everything just goes wrong. Like they're
Yeah.
everywhere. Like dang. Like they're just in the streets and the troopers are everywhere. Like dun, dun. I actually am curious,
Hmm.
and we might talk about this next week because of our topic. I've been interesting how they always say like let's call in the Empire. Let's call in the Empire as if it's some
Hmm.
separate entity, and I'm like, I thought the planet was part of the Empire. Is it not? Like,
Yeah.
that'd be like here in Irvine, we say, let's call the United States. We are the United States. It'd be like if in your city, it's like, let's call Canada.
Let's call
Yep,
Canada.
let's call Canada. And then like the Canadians are here. Like, wait, we are like I don't quite get why they are acting like the federal galactic government some sort of separate entity. Um, it's always find that I find the phrasing strange.
Interesting.
That's like my one little political science nitpick, or not even nitpick, just curiosity of like,
Yeah.
why are you treating it like? Is it? I mean, maybe Janix is not an official part of was it official part of the Republic or not? I don't know. I mean, I don't know I just think it's weird.
Yeah.
That's
I
my
haven't thought about it, but I'll let you go. Keep going.
that's my question. But no, a great action. The lightsaber duels are
Oh yeah.
great.
Ridiculous.
Seeing Mark be scary, that was kind of cool considering he was just kind of there in Ahsoka and then died.
Hmm.
Um, so there's that. Yeah, I'm very curious to see where this all ends,
Hmm.
and we're all in agreement that at the end Mark calls Darth Vader, right? Like, right? It's not.
So
I think it is.
so so Dom and I were watching that episode, and it could be three. Could be the three possibilities, right?
Hmm.
I mean, to state the obvious here, the three possibilities.
Hmm.
So it could be Vader because we think he's the Lord commanding the Inquisitorius.
Hmm.
Could be the Grand Inquisitor. Or either. It could be Sheev because of Maul,
It's
right?
possible. I
Dimmick
mean, okay.
Maul, and also it seems like he has a cloak.
Fair, fair.
So
I will say I'm kind of ruling out the Grand Inquisitor only because it's the Grand Inquisitor. I'm sorry, you don't hide. You don't need to hide the Grand Inquisitor. He's not
true.
that special. I'm
That's true.
sorry, he's not that
Yeah,
special.
good point.
Sorry, Rebels fans. He's not that big. The Emperor, I could see it, but
Especially
at the
it's Maul, right? Like your former apprentice is out here trying to
same, I mean,
claim your title here. And I don't mean Emperor, I mean Dark Lord of the Sith. And
that's
that's
true.
something the Inquisitors would have an understanding of, right?
That's true. Although my one thing would be considering the Emperor's already made it 2 appearances in Bad Batch, I feel like hiding him is kind of a bit of a
Yeah,
bit of
that's
a
true too.
bit of a you know an odd thing, which again kind of points to
Mhm.
Vader. I feel like if you were gonna take the chance to just do Maul versus Vader, which you could argue it's fan service, but we kind of know that was somewhere in the wings anyway.
That was sweet.
This is the opportunity to do it. I think we
Mhm.
all want to see Maul and Vader fight because it's just awesome.
Mhm.
Every comic book pre Legends has thought of some way to have Vader and Maul
Mhm.
fight, be it even if it's not really Maul. Sometimes there were some weird things, Vader fighting like projections of Darth Maul and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
also, but outside of just rule of cool factor, which obviously is a big one. Of course, you want Vader and the Emperor to fight because Vader, not Vader and the Emperor. We want that too. Vader and Maul to fight because again, it's like
Mhm.
Palpatine's kind of having his two children duke it out. Like Palpatine's like Vader, your older brother's causing the problem. Go teach him a lesson. So,
Mhm.
you're the responsible younger brother. Go deal with it.
Yeah.
Deal with my children. Deal with my. So
Yeah.
I am in the if just rule process of elimination minus
Mhm.
just storytelling minus plus fan servicey, it's probably Vader.
Yeah. That does make a little more sense. I'll agree.
Mm.
It, especially also middle management. I mean, why does Sheev need to get involved? He's too busy eviling. He's
I don't.
too busy emperoring to worry about this. But yeah,
Okay,
I
I
mean,
wonder.
he does. He gets involved again. He gets involved on Mandalore. He goes to Mandalore
I
himself, right?
true. I wonder though. Well,
Yeah.
I
He
don't want to
doesn't
get too
send
much.
Dooku, right?
I mean, I do wonder for like two reasons. One, I
Hmm.
think maybe at that point Maul was getting a little too big, powerful for his britches.
Yeah,
Here, Maul's kind of not. And I
true.
also do wonder because if we take in the Son of Dathomir comic into
Hmm.
account, I wonder if he cared more because of Mother Talzin and less because of Maul personally. Like, well, Mother Talzin's gone and she was way scarier and more powerful than I am, and compared to that, Maul's just
Hmm.
annoying.
Yeah,
I'll Vader deal with it. I
I
I
mean,
got a galaxy to run and
yeah,
become godhood to achieve and turn to life to deal with.
yeah. Also, a few thoughts. Before we move on.
Yeah.
Um, have we seen Vader on screen this early in the timeline? Obviously, the Charles Soule comic. There's the
Yes.
Adam Christopher novel.
Uh-huh.
Um,
We have actually. We have. We've seen him
when
in the Clone Wars season 7 for the final shot. We've seen him
yeah,
in
I mean,
Tales of the Empire with the Inquisitorius just getting started, and that was pretty
oh yeah,
early
that's true.
with
Yeah, that's true.
Barris. And I
Yeah,
think that was supposed to be like a week or so.
yeah,
Um, and considering they had the TK Troopers, this is like 1 year
yeah.
after Episode 3. So yeah, we have
Mhm.
technically seen Vader pretty early. You see him in the end of Clone Wars, so they got the
Yeah,
model. They have another model for Tales of the
yeah,
Jedi. Not
yeah,
Tales of the Empire.
yeah.
So they got the model all set up. So yeah, we have technically
Mhm.
seen Vader. Um, at least
Yeah.
if you're talking about like a mainline show, then I guess Clone Wars season 7.
I
Sure,
mean, well, that's season 7. That doesn't. I mean, that's actually probably a little bit later because those are
right? Regular
the
stormtroopers.
regular stormtroopers from later.
If you're
Also,
talking in
that's a silent cameo, basically. I mean, yeah, the Tales of the Empire is more an appearance, but yeah, I mean, because he was just Anakin. That's the fascinating thing, right? He was just not Lantern. So yeah, but anyway, um, I mean, ultimately, what matters more to this story is Merrick and all and all that. But yeah, it'll be cool. It'll be cool to see Vader in there eventually. Even though we see him all over the place, but why not? Another thought about the
funny enough,
men.
we don't see him that
Yeah,
much on screen. I always feel like people always say
true.
that, but it's like if you don't read the comics, Vader
Yeah,
actually doesn't show up that much.
no, he doesn't. That's true. And well, that's intentional. You want to use him sparingly,
Right.
right? There has
Unless
to
you're
be a
Marvel, then it's like
yeah.
Vader
Well,
versus the Martian people. Vader versus Godzilla.
yeah, we're still using. Well, if you're Marvel, you have a whole on run called Darth Vader, and
Several.
you actually tell a Vader story. That's what I mean, right? You have to use Vader sparingly in a story that isn't a Vader story.
That's true.
Yeah. Um. So there's that. But in terms of the those Mandalorians in the hallway there, I don't know if it was about money. I think it's more um like just risking their skin. They didn't think that would be that like they could deal with the local crime bosses. They could deal with Lawson and his his detachment, but to deal with the Empire wasn't in the deal. And I don't know, like Steel keeps on getting worse. Pray the Empire doesn't alter it any further. So there's that. Sorry, there was a third thing I wanted to talk about. I wanted to mention.
I brought up Janix.
Oh, yeah, Janik. Oh, yeah, that. Yeah. I mean, we'll get into this next week. Wait, sorry, 1 second. I'm still getting over this congestion. We'll talk about this more next week, but I heard a great description of the Roman Empire as that it only happened when the army marched through.
Mm-hmm.
Right. By and large, I mean, that was the technology of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Was you couldn't to leave, these towns would be left alone, and if there were some local bandits causing trouble,
mm-hmm.
or local whatever's causing trouble, then you may call in the army, but then the army would take over. So calling in the Empire or calling in the army, it makes sense to me.
No, I agree.
And also it's a way of expressing loss and skepticism, right? Of it.
No, I agree, because I feel like Star Wars is always sort of described its galactic factions less from like a civilian side, more like a military. Like, call on the New Republic. That means just here's the X-wings and the Starfighters. Doesn't mean here's the Department of Agriculture bureau guy. I mean, it's
like
a little
calling the feds, right? Calling the feds is where,
right. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's Star Wars depicts its galactic government more like just the military, even though because of the technology, there are civilian bureaus, I guess, involved in things.
Yeah.
And but you're right. That is probably what they're going for, even though it's a little weird because they have the technology technically.
Yeah. Also, I mean, totalitarianism, authoritarianism, the army is more integrated into politics, right? There's no posse comitatus or anything like that. So,
although still, the New Republic still feels like calling the army. I guess with the Old Republic, it's calling the Jedi. That's who they send when you're like, well, we got the Republic. We need the Republic here, and then send in the Jedi, send in the department, then the Justice Department.
Also, I mean, last thing to say, a standing galactic army. Like, remember, this is what, 4 years after the beginning of the Clone Wars.
True.
4 years after the raising of a Grand Army of the Republic. Like, we've been doing this podcast longer than there had been a galactic army at this point. You know what I mean? So before it was Corsac or the Defense Coalition or whatever,
or just the Jedi. Sometimes it's just
the Jedi. Call them the Jedi. Yeah. So
yeah. I always say, and then we can move on. I always feel like the Galactic Empire is the Roman Empire military. Then I always feel like the best way to describe how the New Republic is like. Always feel like it's like Starfleet. Like they always talk about the fleet, the precious fleet. I always feel like it's like a Starfleet situation.
Yeah,
that's always the vibe I got from the New Republic fleet. Like, they destroyed the New Republic fleet. The fleet. Like,
but like during Enterprise, not during TNG.
Probably, or maybe to some extent, I don't know, but something like that.
Or even during like the current, like the Discovery.
I always feel like it's more like TOS kind of fleet.
Yeah. No,
but anyway.
All right, back to Star Wars. So yes, let's dive in. I'll put this up, but it's time for our favorite Canadian Heritage moment. Joel, I gotta throw this on first.
TV sucks the brain right out of the skull. So next seminar we'll probe the content of television.
Professor McLuhan,
well, of course, the content of television is movies, but the message of television is what it does to us, the users.
Are you saying that the medium is more important than the message it carries?
No. The medium is not more important than the message. It's obvious. The medium is the message.
medium is the message. What does that mean?
Well, of course, the medium is the message. It's what I...
He's full of great ideas.
Like print changed the shape of the world, people don't read newspapers, they get into them like a warm bath.
This Canadian changed the way the world thinks about communications.
Is the message, then the content must be the audience. And of course, electronic information is turning the world into a global village. Take light bulbs, they're an information medium.
So yeah, there's Dr. Marshall McLuhan, great Canadian, talking about text and medium and how both the content and the actual genre and everything is the way of communicating. So with all that being said, Joel, I'll throw it to you. In-universe text, take it away.
Yes, hang on. I just realized I did not turn on a light, and I should have turned on the light. There we go.
Okay.
There we go. More light for me.
Okay.
Yeah. So this whole discussion started for me when I was looking at the Jedi Council forums, and some people were talking about could get into a little controversy, some semi-spoilers. Maybe not. I don't know. For the Mandalorian Grogu visual dictionary, because some people got an early access to it.
Mhm.
And there's a big controversy because apparently it seems like a bunch of background characters who appeared up in the Mandalorian Grogu did not get named. And the old school, let's name some background characters for funs and giggles. That didn't happen, or even some of the names of like some of the Starfighter pilots. Apparently, like Moff Gideon's Bendy TIE fighter from season 1 actually didn't get a name, which is a little sad. And people are like, well, what's going on here? Like we used to name these things all the time. And I've seen some of the pages. I'll just say it's still pretty. I would still say there's some interesting stuff in the visual dictionary for sure. It's a cool map. I love that. But it's like, what's going on? So somebody is like, well, if Lucasfilm's getting all angsty about visual dictionaries moving forward because they're afraid of like stepping on the toes of a future content creator, visual person. What is what is an idea for for an alternative? Something to not hardcore. Not hardcore. Lock yourself in to a lore in case a film person wants to change it, but also like, we can still give you something anyway for fun. I think an interesting example would be how Cassian's whole backstory pretty much was overrun by Andor, even though the visual dictionary for Rogue One had an entirely different backstory for him at the time. And so people have sort of talked about, well, what about just in-universe text like Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire? Somebody suggested, like in-universe dossiers compiled of intelligence operatives who are irritated about how unreliable the information is, and sort of like, yeah, that could be interesting. Where it's sort of like you're giving us this lore, but you're also doing it in the context of this is from the Star Wars universe, and the people are like, well, this is what we could find. We're not 100% sure if this is correct, so if it changes later, well, we got the wrong information. And I think this approach is something interesting in terms of like giving us nerds lore, but also saying this isn't locked in. We might like kind of what they did in Andor, but reverse, where they're like, hey, that comic or that Cassian backstory where he said he was from Fesk? Oh yeah, that was just made up. His mom told. So what you actually got was like the official documents on like Andor's record, but in reality, this is what actually happened, and it's sort of like, kind of treating it a lot more malleable than just this is Andor's backstory. This will always be his backstory. And I don't know. I think that's an interesting thing to do, and I think we've seen the evolution of this idea of in-universe text from, I think, the first one being Skywalker, The Family at War, all the way up to obviously my favorite book, Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire. And we're about to get another one soon with the Wedge memoirs, which is going to be a lot of fun for me. Because I'm rereading Rogue Squadron right now.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll toss it to you, Matthew. What are your thoughts on this idea of in-universe text that give us lore, even maybe add lore, but also in a way that doesn't lock lore in? And it's like, well, this is what we found. Could be completely wrong in a couple years, but this is what we found for now. Enjoy.
I mean, my guy Reith. Let's talk about my guy Reith. Like, some of my favorite parts of the High Republic are him looking back on stuff that happened, like stuff he's discovered centuries and centuries before. We get the tale of Barnabas Vim from Reith Silas researching about Barnabas Vim, in Echoes of Fear, in Tears of the Nameless. So, yeah, it really, I mean, what it does, sir. Oh, I did have my decaf. It adds a whole other layer to, like it's a way of telling a story within a story, often. In this sense, it adds a whole other, so it adds that whole layer of, archaeology and that they're in a universe. Well, this is the layer, is trying to gather my thoughts here, that it's, I actually have the whole meaning of myth book. I should bring that out. I got that. I found it. Anyway, Star Wars is one of our great 21st century North American Western myths of meaning making, but it's expanded so far that there are, within this meaning making myth, there are characters who have stories that have meaning making myths. Right? There are sacred Jedi texts, right there, and we even have there's another sort of source book, the sort of supposedly like Rey's research notes on like the Jedi. I think it might be in here somewhere, or
I have a few that are like, I know a couple that are like that,
yeah,
from
like,
Legends.
so yeah, and so but Rey studying about the Jedi, and she has Luke's notes about the Jedi. I forget what the book is called, but
I thought it was about her time on Jakku and like all those things she was like.
yeah, there's that too. But I think this is supposed to be in between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, where she's training, but like Jedi Across the Galaxy or something like that. Anyway, it adds a texture, and a flavor of, like I said before. I'm all about the the space wizards and their laser swords. It adds a sense of mystery and mysticism to it. And you mentioned the word malleable, and that's the interesting thing, right? We want the Warhammer is fun, from what I understand about it, right? It's fun, it's interesting. They trying to spell this history. We want this sort of linear, I think Halo, Mass Effect, all these other
Lord of the Rings.
Like
I bet Lord of the Rings, Game of
Lord of the
Thrones.
Rings is a bit like that too, except that Tolkien there, I mean, you go far back enough, and you're talking about meaning making and myth as well. And so, I think Lord of the Rings is closer to what Star Wars is doing, in characters that are consciously and self-consciously making myth in their texts. So there's that. Also, I mean, with Barnabas Vim, it's trying to find a history in order for Reith to learn how to respond in the present moment. Who these nameless are, not just Barnabas Vim, but going even further back in time. Cal Kestis with discovering the Zepho, all that. So there's that, but also, basically, what we're getting into, talking with McLuhan, right? The medium is the message. Both the limits and possibilities of the codex as a technology. And what I mean this book, right? You know what I mean by codex, right?
Or comic. Could be.
Well, it's the same physical medium. A comic is a type of codex. It's this bound, fixed, printed text, and therefore it can contain records and contain myths, and it can contain a world and a universe, but it's fixed, and therefore if you want something different, you have to write a whole new one. And if you want to I mean, that's the thing with illuminated manuscripts in the Middle Ages, right? Well, here's this is a bit of a tangent, but one of the fascinating things, and maybe this is what we're seeing with the Mandalorian visual guide and Mandalorian Grogu and all that, is a version of this where, if you wanted to, in the Middle Ages, if you wanted to, sell or give a Bible to another neighboring monastery, you take the Bible you had here and you copy it out. I mean, that was entire lives were spent doing that for monks. It's called the scriptorium. And of course, monks are human and they would make mistakes, and they would pass on this broken telephone through the centuries, and that's how you get textual variants and variations. What is the true text? How you answer that question is a philosophical question. What is the true story? I mean, here's the thing, though. We like the in-universe text, the out-of-universe text. What we see on screen, even that might not be the true story, right? That's an there's no, because it's a fictional story. There's no true story.
Yeah, exactly. I think,
and also it's from a point of view of a character is another thing to say there. So
yeah, I would agree with that. I want to add on this because I feel like that's what fans always, especially a lot of people who get all bent out of shape about retcons and stuff, and always like, what's the true story? Is it the book Ahsoka or the Tale of the Jedi thing? And
is it Wendig or Segura? Like,
right, exactly. Yeah, and it's interesting. And this, I think Legends actually was a little more interesting with this because back then it's sort of like they didn't care until like real later in life of like, so like you get something like Tale of the Jedi, right? And Jedi and Sith, especially the Sith, no one really knew what the Sith were doing all sorts of wacky things with the Force. Like they could turn people's tongues into snakes and raise the dead by just flipping their fingers and whatnot, right? Very, very wild stuff with the 90s. You get away with a lot of Star Wars. And what's funny, and this is what I think kind of the in-universe tech stuff goes along, is like later Star Wars, especially in the novels where people I think treated that more closer to like the movie's tone and quote unquote the real Star Wars, would sometimes comment on older stuff in interesting meta ways. So like in the Plagueis novel, there's a section of Plagueis talking about the ancient Sith Lords, right, from Tales of the Jedi, those 90s comics. And it's interesting how in that novel, James Lucena writes it, where Plagueis is like, yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on with the Sith. We're not even sure if it's true or not. It's just like there were legends of like how Sith could fly and raise dragons and, do essence transfers and stuff like that and blah, blah, blah. And Exar Kun's ghost could like do all sorts of wacky stuff. And, the novel, it very much wants to adhere closer to the tone of the movie than sort of the more limited point of view that the movies have sort of gone with in terms of like what the Force is capable of and stuff like that. And they played as like, well, maybe that stuff happened, or maybe that's just ancient Sith tales over exaggerating our powers, or maybe the Force was just very different 1,000 years ago, and life and diluted its abilities. We don't know. There's like guidebooks of like the Book of Sith and the Book of Jedi. It's like that kind of take all the various stories. Or here's an interesting one. I'm going to use Star Trek for a hot second.
We've already used Star Trek already. I don't know if we're allowed. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
There is an interesting passage in the Star Trek, the movie, the first movie, the motion picture,
the motion picture
novel, which is from Captain Kirk's point of view.
Okay.
And he says somewhere in the novel where he's reminiscing about the 5-year journey, basically the original series, he said something about, people always tended to over-exaggerate our adventures. And he said, and I think the novel says that because the novel, that movie and that novel was trying to create a different aspect of Star Trek. Kind of more serious, more formal, it's very different tone than the original series. And the novel from an in-universe point of view is trying to be all meta and be like, Kirk's like, Oh yeah, the original series. That was just people telling overly exaggerated
Mm.
stories. Some of that, like some of that may have happened, but the other stuff was like a little exaggerated. Like I didn't make dramatic moves like this, and like so it's sort of interesting, kind of how even newer material can kind of look back at like things that are kind of contradictions about
Yeah.
the various stories being told, all the myths and stories. Like, hey, wait a minute. Why is Thrawn talking about the Clone Wars and these clone masters and whatnot? And then like meta stuff could be like, oh, maybe people in the archives got that one wrong or something.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how even these in-universe texts can kind of look at the kind of the small contradictions of, or even just different ways we depict things in
Yeah.
Star Wars, and kind of like have a meta discussion about like, yeah, you ever notice how sometimes the Mandos are like the good guys and other times they're evil, and like what's up with that? And then we can have like like I would love someone like, be it Chris Kemshaw or an out universe author, to do like an in universe discussion on the Mandalorian history and kind of like bring
Yeah.
up the fact like some Mandos are good, some are terrorists.
Yeah.
I think in doing that, you don't have to come down hard on like Mandos are good or Mandos are bad. You can just kind of have a discussion about like Mandos are complicated.
Yeah.
Are they? Is their culture of warrior one of honor? Is it one of goodness? I don't know. And if you make it in universe instead of out of universe,
Yeah.
then you can just say, well, this is just what Chris Kemshaw or Ronnie and I forgot what we always give him what his name.
Well,
is.
Montefer Kimshalkin.
Yeah, Montefer Conshalkin thinks about the Mandalorian, but maybe there's another book that says that the Mando culture is great, or so it's like Star Wars itself as a franchise doesn't have to come down on the Mandalorians from a moral perspective, but this particular book could if it wanted to, because it's just one perspective.
A book by Karen Travis, right? I'm just kidding.
Well,
yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I mean, the Clone Wars. We've seen that theory that Clone Wars series is Republic propaganda for the war. I mean, that's why you have the Tom Kane kind of World War II style news serial crawl thing at the beginning every time. So there's that. Whereas in Andor, for example, when you see those clone troopers, they're acting like the Empire. They're not the good guys in that. And I think we're getting more stories of the Republic in the Clone Wars being less savory than we thought, less heroic than we thought, or that we're
Zero
used
Company.
to.
Hopefully, that sounds
and the thing is, I mean, that's the thing. Clone Wars, that's the story it was telling. That's great. I mean, here's an idea. It's an idea for an in-universe text. Satine on the history of Mandalore. And her kind of maybe a manifesto on reform or something.
That'd be cool.
That, something like that. Another similar thing, a Jedi biography of Tar Vizsla. Right?
That'd be cool.
And why? Because here's an answer. Why are they depicted as villains? Because the Jedi had this war and had this ancient skepticism of them. It's only when again someone like Satine shows up that Obi-Wan gets his hormones going, but also they're willing to play ball and willing to at least stay independent, but have the Republic get Republic support. So, and of course, when they're desperate, Bo-Katan asks Ahsoka to come help. But yeah, that's the thing is, I mean, we're talking about bias here, and bias isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I mean, every bias is all bias means is perspective. And it's almost more interesting to hear and to read a text for its perspective. If we hold intention that the real world might be more complicated. Here's a great out of universe real world example of this, right?
Mhm.
A few months ago, I read Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, The Message, and in it, he's talking about, I mean, yeah, like, well, the black perspective in him. I mean, he's the, from what I understand, the great contemporary black writer in the U.S. And he writes the whole second half of the book is really about Israel Palestine, and it is entirely, this is what how all these things that the IDF is doing to make Palestinian life hell. And yeah, it's important to dig in, even if I would say, okay, what if the uh what if the facts on the ground may be more complicated in some ways. To hear this text, this book, this codex give this perspective as an artifact in the world. So maybe this gets to the heart of it, right? Is what these in-universe texts are doing is telling us the story of Star Wars, right? They're saying, well, so for example, Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire. I mean, ultimately, what Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire is, oh no, the First Order, we just narrowly missed, well, we narrowly fell victim to the Empire, to tyranny again, right? Beaumont Kin has the First Order in view when he's writing this book. So yeah, it there's obviously goes through and things about the atrocity of the Empire, but to continually stay vigilant. That's his perspective. I think that's Ta-Nehisi Coates' perspective. Continually stay vigilant about tyranny. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, even shoot, here's a text, that song that the Gore sing right before their massacre, right?
Right.
Nous sommes les Gauls, to be literal French, but it's that it's what it's telling us is the story of here is this people, this fictional people called the Gore, on this fictional planet called Gorman. They have this fictional cultural artifact called this song and this anthem, and that what that does is give us a weight to their massacre. Right. So yeah, it definitely, I mean, that's the thing. That's the way it just adds this rich layer.
I mean, if I want some in-universe text, and I remember our friend Dart Ferrex brought this up. I want to see like the New Republic Constitution. I want that. I'd love to read that. They'll never do it, but that'd be great. I know there is an in-universe text of the Declaration of Rebellion, which is very U.S. coded, like we the free peoples of the galaxy for the rights and liberties of all sentient kind. Very Declaration of Independence coded. I think it's still the same thing in canon too. So that's a fun one. In-universe text. Obviously, we got the Declaration of the New Order speech back in Legends. There's like a whole longer version of Palpatine's speech in. I've read you one version from the novelization. There's actually a longer version in like a Wikipedia, not like in an old Lucasfilm archive back when they do cool stuff like that. Of Palpatine's whole speech, and it's long as heck.
Maybe there's an example from Red Leader, about torture. Something with Mon Mothma.
Oh yeah.
In this is in Mask of Fear. I want to say, yeah. I mean, here's another example of, I'd say, a text, if you will. I mean, one of my favorite moments in the High Republic is in Light of the Jedi. We get a whole Jedi Council debate, and it's not really a text, right? We don't get the transcript, we get Charles Soule narrating it, or whatever, the narrator, the author, the implied author of Light of the Jedi.
Mhm.
But because we also get Jor O'Malley, Master Jor O'Malley's in-head perspective, and the way, I mean, that's again telling the story of Star Wars here. The way that scene functions in terms of the Jedi rousing themselves to mobilize to confront the Nihil threat.
Mhm.
I mean that's debated. Like it's, I mean, that's another thing. Is something they get. Well, here's another aspect to in-universe text of things that get repeated, right? How, I mean, this is a theme, right? Debating whether or not to go and confront the threat. Jor O'Malley debates it. Jyn Erso, right?
Right.
What chance? What choice?
Mm.
Leia with the First Order and the Resistance. So, yeah, I mean, we've gotten a few of those debates. That's the thing. We've gotten
Uh,
the Jyn Erso, we've gotten Jor O'Malley, we've gotten Jyn Erso. We haven't gotten Leia with the Senate, but I think that might be coming soon.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Here's another great example of, it's not a text, but it's certainly a myth.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because it's one of those situations where it's like, oh no, actually no. Well, actually no, because it was in the novelization, which is confirmed to be somewhat real. But you never know. The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise,
Yep.
right? Like, forget the book, forget
Yep.
even the Revenge of the Sith novelization, forget even the script, because I
Just
know it's
the
in the
film.
script. If you just take the context of the movie as is,
Mhm.
Palpatine telling this tale, obviously, um, it's heavily implied, of course, that it's about himself, but there's no evidence to say it's
Mhm.
about himself. He could
Mhm.
just be telling Anakin a story about a Sith who has all the things Anakin needs, or Anakin, because Anakin's looking for eternal life for Padme and whatnot, and he could just be like, you know what? Yeah, there was a Sith Lord, and this is the cool stuff the dark side could do.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, we know because of the script, because of the novelization, because of the book, of course, the James Luceno book later, and of course, later Acolyte, for 5 seconds. Yeah, Plagueis is a real guy, and he was Palpatine's master. It's actually kind of funny how Palpatine makes it so more dramatic of like, his apprentice killed him in his sleep, and not, well, actually, when I was elected chancellor, he and I had a couple drinks, and he kind of got a little, and he was kind of like, woo, and then it's like, well, opportunity knocks.
Mhm.
Zap. Like it's got a little tipsy that night, and never drink in front of Palpatine, fellas. But I think that's another interesting thought of Star Wars making internal myth making, where we have obviously Plagueis is real,
Mhm.
both in canon and in Legends. Obviously,
Yeah.
that was one of the most earliest things confirmed.
Mhm.
Not just in terms of just probably the scripts and the intent of Lucas, but also just he's mentioned in the Tarkin novel plenty of times. It's like, yeah, Plagueis was my master, and in the Rise of Skywalker novelization, he's like,
Mhm.
Palpatine reminds Rey, like, yeah, are you about to do what I did to my master, Darth Plagueis? So they've stuck very hard with like, yeah, the story is real and it's about
Yeah.
Palpatine. But I do think it's interesting that, yeah, that's another thing that's sort of like, it's an in-universe story, an in-universe text of
Yeah.
this Plagueis guy, and could he have been a myth or a legend? I mean, obviously, we know the answer is he's real. He's very real,
Mhm.
and he's mooning around somewhere. But I do think that's an interesting.
Yeah.
That's another interesting one of like, it could have just been it's this legend,
Mhm.
which I guess it is to, it's important to Palpatine, but it's still kind of one of those interesting things of like, is it real? And the answer is yes, but I think that's an interesting one.
I mean, either way, it's
Mhm.
real from a certain point of view, right?
Exactly.
Everything comes down to fact, Bob. Well, then that's kind of the point, right? And I mean, the purpose of that scene isn't for Sheev to just communicate information, communicate these facts. the purpose of that scene is to seduce Anakin to the dark side of the Force, right? Both and interesting, your point for Padme. Also, I mean, Charles Soule brings this up in at the in issue at the finale of his Vader run, 2017 Vader run, right? The whole "I am your father" moment. I mean, that's a vision. People went. I mean, I've brought this up multiple times. And people were like, "What does that mean? Palpatine is Anakin's father?" No, but
if you read some of the George Lucas drafts, Palpatine thinks he is.
Sure, but the thing is, I mean, in the opera scene, what Palpatine's doing is tugging on this paternal thread to say, if you join me, you'll have the father you'll always be longing for, right? That the answer to where you come from, to who you are and where you belong in the galaxy, and why you exist, one of the most fundamental questions we all ask is can be answered. And so, I mean, talk about meaning making, that can function. The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise can function as a meaning making story for Anakin. It certainly functions as a meaning making story for Palpatine, right? I mean, especially the whole killed him in his sleep part, right? The ruthlessness of Sheev, but also, but also the aspirations, right? You talk about Sheev always wanted to be eternal and immortal. I mean, that's another part of it, right? He's telling the story of Star Wars, the character that Chief Palpatine always just wants to actually find that power to create life, to preserve his own life. There you go. This is a decent joke, right there. I'll say that. He's the Sith who stepped up.
Exactly. I love that. Good job, Brett. Good one.
Unfortunately, but yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yes. I mean, it's also, but I also feel like in an odd sense, this is kind of funny, kind of go back to kind of the question of, is it history, is it mythology? When we decanonize legends, we called it legends, obviously. And I think what's interesting from the meta standpoint, and it's something they kind of do from a certain point of view. They can't do it with everything, obviously. There's certain, but Tim Zahn once said it's like you accidentally spilled something on the archive, and now you're trying to refine what's real and what's not. Even Dave is like, there's always a little truth in legends. I mean, that's what Ahsoka says too. I think what's interesting, and this is kind of how, in a odd sense, sometimes you bring back certain things from legends. Obviously, we've done it in bigger ways than other ways, of course. But it's like, well, all those. Some of the this is how we did it. Even did it in Legends itself before it all became Legends, where it's like some of the more wackier stories. Be it the Marvel comics from the 80s.
Oh gosh, yeah,
when that got folded in,
Mm-hmm.
where it's sort of treated like, maybe those were over exaggerations. Like maybe Darth Vader didn't hire an actor to be Obi-Wan Kenobi to lure Luke into a trap. Maybe that was just somebody told in a. Or I told you earlier, like how Plagueis talked about Tales of the Jedi and how he kind of describes the Tales of the Jedi in the Plagueis novel. Plagueis kind of describes the Tales of the Jedi stories as sort of like some version of this did happen, but we're not quite sure if some of the more wackier things happened, like Sith can turn people's tongues into snakes, and we're not quite sure how the Sith sorcery worked back then. And it's just like we knew it was powerful, but not quite sure if it was that powerful, or if we were just making it up at the time, or somebody was just over exaggerating. I could even see it with if you ever did a Luke Skywalker Jedi Academy show, which please do, please. I could see you I would love a meta thing of people are the Legend of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I was about to bring that one up too.
Is it true you had a robot ghost girlfriend who was a Jedi, and Luke could be like, no, or something like that.
Mhm.
Luke, is it true? Like you dealt with had like a little a stardish a stardish a Death Star little Death Star weapon that was the size of a mini gun, and it's like, well, the Empire might have tried to do something like that. Kind of, and
Yeah.
is it true that you fought a clone of yourself, Luke? With Thrawn
Luke.
that Thrawn was using at the time. I'm not to say this ain't real,
That would be funny. Yeah.
but it is kind of be cool to kind of do those sort of meta things as well,
Yeah.
and to kind of go back to I have this in my notes, like a version of Fire and Blood for Star Wars.
Mm.
I feel like that's kind of also how you do, and that's why that's how I kind of headcanon Old Republic stuff still being quote unquote canon, and even Tales of the Jedi stuff, because A, it can still kind of fit, but also B, it's like, just you don't have to like commit to the details of it. It's sort of
Right.
like how with Old Republic, I think they treat it as canon, but I think they treat it with sort of like, yes, there was a guy named Darth Revan. He existed. There probably was the Star Forge, and most of that stuff probably happened. But we're gonna treat it in like big,
Mhm.
broad. This happened long time ago. We don't have all the details because the archives have sort of been
Mhm.
messed with. But yeah, there was a guy named Revan. He's in the archives. Even the
Yeah.
Sith know about him. And that's sorry, I'm rambling now, but I will stop after this
Yeah.
part. But that's actually kind of funny how before the Old Republic MMO kind of ruins it for me. Where I wish that's how they would treat Revan. I think then this is how I would treat Revan moving forward in canon is he exists. He is a person. There is a guy named or gal or person named Revan
Mhm.
in the Star who existed, but his story is so shrouded in mystery, no one really knows what happened. Like
Right.
you could even play it where like some people say he was a former Sith Lord who redeemed himself. While maybe the Sith have a version like, no, Revan, he snapped out of it and went back to the dark side and led us to glory. And like you can kind of play
Yeah.
it off as like no one really knows what happened to Revan, but he exists. You just don't really know what happened, and like it's all true.
I
It's
mean, that's also a possibility. I know you're joking, Red, but yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, so what you're raising, sure, all these legends, but like even the legends of Luke Skywalker, the book you mentioned, right? I mean, these are campfire stories that people tell.
Mhm.
I mean, there's one about him learning how to spear a fish 50 meters down or whatever, and we see that in the last Jedi. We see on Octo, he's actually doing it. So there's basis in some of these things. We see the basis of him going in front of the First Order with the laser sword and halting their advance to let the resistance go free. You see that on Crate. But the larger than life legends around Luke. Here's the thing. Why tell these stories? Why are these kids telling these stories? Why are the Sith have a version of Revan's story to say, no, he lost the victory? It's for what's needed in the present, right?
Mhm.
These stories about Luke are about inspiring the resistance to courage, inspiring these kids
Mhm.
to dream that there's more to life than sweeping up horse dung for these rich Cantonians, whatever, or father dung, whatever. For the Sith, it's about inspiring their return and their revenge.
Mhm.
Right. That's and the version that the Mandalorians have, and whatever version of Mandalorian history and identity that Satine has.
Whatever version of the Clone Wars, right? Like, if we go
Yeah.
with that idea that the Clone Wars 2008 series is Republic propaganda,
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily, I think, excuse everything, but it's sort of my way of
No.
sort of looking at it. It's like, why are the Separatists always just so comically evil and Dooku so comically
Yeah,
evil?
exactly. There's that.
Why is Grievous such a loser?
Yeah.
I mean, I bet I don't know if it's true. I bet you there's some book or something where someone brought up to Mace Windu that Battle of Dantooine in like the 2D show, and Mace like, oh yeah, that was a bit of an over exaggeration. I didn't actually punch droids like that.
Yeah.
But that's another example. Like 2D Clone Wars too. I mean, like
Yeah.
I love 2D Clone Wars. It's great. But it's stylized. It's all heck. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh yeah. Well,
And that's
it's
why I
such
love
a
it. I wish we got
distinctive
more
style.
stylized stuff. Quite frankly.
I mean, so again, here's another thing you're getting at. I'm talking about the present. I think so. For I don't know how long, there was a skepticism about the kind of the interest of a text in the present, right? Propaganda is a pejorative now, right? It wasn't always, it's not always necessarily pejorative. I mean the euphemism I meaning making, right? Meaning making in the present. We define our communities based on story. We not define's the wrong word. We mark, we gather, we identify based on story. And I mean that's the thing why the New Republic has both the New Republic and the Resistance take the rebellion warbird or rebellion firebird or whatever it's called, because they're self-identifying as that continuation of its spirit of freedom and spirit of equality, to mixed results, but it's telling that story. I mean, partly because the people there who can tell that story, and so we don't necessarily have to be so skeptical anymore. I think we're coming around to saying, I mean, this is to put my hat on. Okay, I'll bring this thing up again. Where are we? Not quite literally this, but not the Whore of Babylon, but yeah, let's see. Let's bring this up. I mean, the whole thing with biblical studies for a good 200-300 years, so much of the focus was on carving away. Okay, what's the agenda in the present? What's the agenda of the authors and what really happened factually, right? And that's still an important thing, right? Reith Silas still needs to understand what happened. I need to understand, okay, what actually was going on in the first century, Judea and Caesarea and Galilee and Jerusalem and all that, those conflicts. But then, okay, in the middle of that, we have the story of these 12 dudes and a whole bunch of women and a whole bunch of folks, carrying on in the middle of that. What does that mean for the community I identify with 2,000 years later? So there's the theology time. But we've added to this text called the Bible. We went from just the Hebrew scriptures to we added a few others. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's what I'm saying. Agenda isn't necessarily a bad thing. We can evaluate an agenda. We can critique it. But just because it's an agenda doesn't mean that aspect of the text is meaningless or suspect. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying here. So
yeah.
That's the thing. Those legends of Luke Skywalker, Luke himself is so suspicious of those legends because he's so down on himself for how human he is and how flawed he is. And the history of the Jedi, I mean, that's the thing. Rey is trying to resurrect this story of the Jedi as the guardians of peace and justice, and Luke is trying to say, no, they created Darth Vader and the Empire. Right? That's that debate, and so Luke is actually. I mean, here's the thing: Luke is also imposing another myth effectively onto it. So, can you get away from that? Is another question. Can you actually get away from any meaning? Is there such thing as objective history. Yeah, again, there is.
Yeah,
But
we're gonna
is
be
there such
careful with
thing-
that because like that could lead
There
to
is
dark
absolutely.
territory.
Oh, absolutely, there is, and it is important. It is important. But is there? I mean, this again, bringing up Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? Is there the possibility of purely, strictly objective history? Of course not. We aren't there, right? We aren't then. And is it? And that's the thing, right? Are you telling a history just to inform,
Mhm.
or are you telling a history to inspire and empower and motivate? Beaumont Kin is telling history to inspire and empower and motivate, and that we don't. Uh, we are skeptical of that at our peril. That's the thing, right? If someone just tells a blank history of the empire, someone else could say, "Oh, that was great. Let's do that again."
This is, I think, hits the nail on the head with,
Mhm.
I think, one of the biggest issues of
Mhm.
not just these multimedia franchises, but also
Mhm.
just a lot of things. I mean, in Star Wars, I think Warhammer has this,
Yeah.
Marvel, DC. I call it the wikification of fiction,
Yeah.
where basically everyone just wants a Wikipedia article or a
Mhm.
Wikipedia article. And don't get me wrong, I love a good Wikipedia article. Okay, I learned a lot of Star Wars just by looking up Wikipedia stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But it can give you sometimes itself a bias, right? Like, so
Mhm.
for example, I used to think for years that everything was like neatly interconnected with Star Wars. It's like, oh, it all tells us one big history of like a character, like a Thrawn or Jason Solo or something like that from birth to
Mhm.
death, and like, oh wow, they had this entire history, all this cool thing, and again, I've never so like when you read Jason Solo or Jaina or somebody's
Mhm.
Wikipedia, like they have his birth and they have his death, and it's like his final story, and then like obviously he fell to the dark side and stuff like that. But when I'm reading that, I'm reading like the most stale, and I was a kid, so I would know better.
Yeah.
Or the most stale, kind of bland version of that character, and just kind of
Mhm.
knew the beats. Where I didn't know was, like, oh, these are a bunch of stories made by authors who didn't always agree on where the direction should go. They all had their very different tones. I don't know. The books could be great. I've not read a lot of Faith Jedi or later EU Endor stuff. I know some people who love New Jedi Order. I know
Mhm.
people who are okay with what happened in the Darth Caedus arc of his.
Mhm.
Some who are very much not. I don't get into the debates because I'm not here to judge. But again, I am just reading a blank text. I'm not
Mhm.
reading the actual book where there's the nuance or the discourse or like the gravitas, right? Like, or forget a EU character, just talk about a Star Wars character. Like we could read Anakin's Wikipedia page all we want. That doesn't really tell us what his fall was like. Just he
Mhm.
fell. Like
Yeah.
you're not getting the
True.
nuance or the pathos or just the moments in Revenge of the
Mhm.
Sith, be it the novelization or the movie, where all that is going down.
Mhm.
But what I like about these in-universe texts, especially Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, is they're not just poorly substituted Wikipedia articles. They are diving into the meta arguments. They're
Mhm.
diving into a little bit even the discourse we as fans have, right? Where again, Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire isn't just here's the history of the Galactic Empire, like a Wikipedia article. Here's its
Mhm.
founding, and this is what happened in the middle, and there's the end.
Yeah.
It is a perspective of here's the empire, this is what it does to people,
Yeah.
this is why it fell. We're collecting all these various stories together and kind of like we're almost weaving a new tale with it in some
Mhm.
ways. Like like my favorite parts of the book is funny enough the comic section where
Yep.
we're dealing with the Crimson Dawn stuff and even the Dark Droid story where it's like all these wacky comics were happening at the time, and Beaumont Kim kind of weaves it into the main narrative and also just the wider history of
Mhm.
Star Wars in a way where it's like, oh, that's how Kira and the Crimson Dawn really gave it to the Empire. Like, oh yeah, then the other stuff was going on too. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, there was the Dark Droids thing. That was like a weird thing in the archives we found. Very strange. Um,
Yeah.
It happened apparently. Like I love how it treats it like that. Just
Yeah.
there's this thing that happened over a week that we found in the archives. Okay, but but again, it's not just simply the Wikipedia dry article of like,
Right.
and then Dark Droids happened, right? It's like, okay, it happened, but we're gonna treat it more like this is a weird thing we found in the archives
Yeah.
for a week. And again, it weaves a narrative, or like I would love. I mean, think of all the in-universe text and debates you can have
Oh, yeah.
about the Jedi. Like, I have like two little Legends books called Book of the Jedi, Book of the Sith.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite things about those books is the annotations, where the characters from Star Wars, all of them from like Luke to Palpatine, have like written little notes in like the margins, and it's hilarious because the idea is this book has been passed to various people in the Star Wars universe, and they're all giving their commentary. So like Palpatine will say something about like the Jedi they suck because they are and blah blah blah, they are boring and they take babies from their children. And then Luke would comment and go like, actually, no, it was an honor to join the Jedi as a child, and they didn't just forcefully take the kids. Everyone was given a choice. And then you'd have like back and forth debates about certain things. Like there's a funny one about like how Plagueis was visiting Korriban one time, and he was like, "There aren't any Sith spirits here, please, boring Sith spirits." And then in the margin, Palpatine's like, "No, Plagueis, you idiot. There are Sith spirits. One's tried to kill me once, you idiot." And then Luke Skywalker, like, later would be like, "Oh, yeah, I also had to deal with some Sith spirits on Korriban. They weren't fun." So it's kind of this, like, it's almost like the characters in universe, and this is what I always love, are having the debates we're having. Like, are the Jedi evil? I mean, obviously, no. I would hope for a firm no on that one. But, in terms of, like, are we just space cops, for this power republic, or like, no, we are more than that. We have to be more than that. And I like kind of like the characters themselves kind of have the same debates we have on these dang podcasts every day.
There we go.
Here's a good one. Red says, history is the act of recording or coalescing. And he says, there is no objective history. There's objective fact, but that's not history. I agree with that.
Way of putting.
Like, like objective fact would be, I don't know, I'm not sure the numbers, millions of people died in the Holocaust. That is a fact. But, a history is something a little bit more of a coalescing of all these things that led up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. That what we confuse the two.
Right.
And we want we want, like, the Wikipedia is great at talking about facts, and facts are important, but facts are important insofar as they help inform our decisions. Right? Facts are important insofar as they help us understand where someone's coming from, what they've experienced, but that's still already getting into, okay, what was their reaction to that? That's more of a story, even though if it's true, it could be a true story. It's deeper than a fact, right? It's more than a fact. We tend to think, we just want to, like, here's what I'm maybe getting at here is, empirical evidence is important, but an obsessive empiricism is never going to be the whole story. And so, I mean, again, that, for example, the whole, I mean, I'm not even clear entirely on the continuity differences between Chuck Wendig and Alex Segura in the Aftermath trilogy and the Battle of Jakku comics, right?
A lot of it deals with Ray Sloan and what she knew at the time, and her relationship to Gallius Rex.
And like, sure, these are, I mean, one's a story primarily about Nora Wexley and Wedge Antilles and that whole crew, and another is a story about Luke and Leia and Han.
A video actually about
and I forgot because it was like, all right, whatever. I mean, that's the thing is, so again, we're dealing with these layers, right? We're dealing with the layer of um, we'll do with a layer of the actual real world text.
Mhm.
Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, is a film in the real world. That's a fact. Within Star Wars The Last Jedi, Luke puts his hand on this book that has the symbol, the logo of the Jedi Order.
Right.
And that book, now page turner it may not be, but it's certainly worth Ray grabbing and finding meaning and telling that story, and even then telling the story of carrying on traditions.
Mhm.
And so within that layer there's probably stories, so we get that story for grabbing the texts. I mean, implicitly we see them.
Mhm.
We also get the story of Luke needing to let them go, right? To bring back this whole who needs to who's resurrecting the Jedi and who's kind of putting it to bed, if you will. Then of course, there's the story within those stories, whatever those texts are. Who knows if there's here's the thing. So for example, again, real world example, in uh in the Gospels, Jesus tells these stories. I mean, we know he's just telling things called parables. I mean, they're fictional stories to illustrate a point. And they're so it's a story within a story. Now, sometimes he's also referring to something in history, or the narrator is referring to something further back, not in history, further back in uh the biblical story, right? To give an account of Jesus' story. I know that's complicated, but like interpreting it in light of Isaiah and the prophets and all that. So again, uh these are layered stories, and again, Reddit saying it's not not the past itself, it's the receipt of the past, and that's why receipt means reception, right?
Right.
To receive, it's the same word. That is why agenda and perspective and argument are really important to look at and to understand, to grasp as part of the real world. you know
I mean,
so-
I think here's the kind of like sort of we go back to Jakku for half a second. Like,
Mhm.
look, as stories, I think my favorite Jakku story is still probably the not aftermath, the Alphabet Squadron stuff.
Sure.
I think that's just better told.
Which I will read this year, I promise.
You should. It's really good. But the fact is, yes, after Endor, there was this year-long trudge against the Empire that culminated in Jakku.
Mhm.
That is the fact. It's the fact that in all three of those stories, four if we count Battlefront,
Mhm.
right? One, Aftermath, is a bit more about the big players, kind of the people who are wheeling and dealing, the people who are affecting these events, right? With Rax and Sloan, and I
Mhm.
guess how well that story is told. Yeah, I like this. I like 2 out of 3. I
Mhm.
like 2 out of 3, and it had its high ups and downs. Outfit Squadron. It's about the pilots. It's
Mhm.
about these defectors from the Empire and really dealing with can you be forgiven, especially considering how long you stayed in the Empire. I mean, you
Mhm.
stayed after 2 Death Stars. You didn't leave after the first one. You left after
Yeah.
the second one. So everyone's a little sus at you. And people really like how that story's told.
Mhm.
And then again, you got the Luke Skywalker comic book, which again people have mixed results on. But again, these are stories with different perspectives. How
Mhm.
well they are told, it depends. People like Aftermath, some don't. Everyone seems to really like Alpha Squadron, and again, Jakku is mixed.
Mhm.
But again, I think, and look, I don't like retcons as much as the next person to some extent as well. But I do think people want to see everything as fact collecting and fact
Yeah.
finding and collecting your lore. And look, I like it when things can pay off in certain ways too. I would have loved to see more rotating capital in
Mhm.
Mandoverse instead of just we're back on Coruscant again. But that's like minor nitpick compared
Yeah.
to something like way worse or something like that. Where it's like what a fundamental story turn problem. I would like to see it, but
Yeah.
or it's or look, retroactively giving Anakin a Padawan after Revenge of the Sith, you know, um, that definitely is something that's like, what happened? What? Okay, but
Yeah.
if you're telling good stories with her, and they did, and they are still, then people kind of will forgive you. I mean, it's sort of like, or heck, bringing back Darth Maul from the dead to kind
Yeah.
of, you know, to this day, there are still people who feel like, oh, did we have to do that? Did we have to? And I wouldn't begrudge them if they still felt that way.
Sure.
And I even can say like, didn't have to, and whether or not it was a good decision,
Mhm.
I think it's one of those things where it's like maybe it wasn't, but it did lead to some pretty good stories. Like right now, like I've
Literally today.
like
Literally today.
literally
Yeah.
today, like I love Maul Shadow Lord. It's
Mhm.
been great.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where it's like the fact was Darth Maul died. And
Mhm.
then he got brought back. Like, wait, you're changing the fact now, and it's like, and look, I
Mhm.
get it from like narrative structures and stuff like that. Of like, if you kill someone off and then bring them back the next second, like is that a good story structure? But that's a
Mhm.
whole other different debate about
Yeah.
storytelling. But I do feel like sometimes it comes off more of like, I know this fact that Darth Maul lived till 20 BBY, and then you
Mhm.
brought him back, right?
Yeah.
It's not so much you brought him back. It's like, well, what are you doing with him? But, it's sort of like bringing back Palpatine, where it's like, okay, I get that because like I don't feel like his full potential for bringing him back. You did some interesting stuff with him, or
Mhm.
didn't do interesting stuff with him. I mean, fair enough. But compared to Darth Maul, where it's like I feel like we are doing interesting stuff with Maul
Yeah.
at least. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Literally today.
Like literally,
Um.
so I get that. So I feel like it's
Mhm.
so much fact finding and like what is real, and I don't think
Right.
we'll make that. I like that the last point.
I mean, the Coruscant Chandrilla example is a great example. You know, Chandrilla being the capital is a way of saying the New Republic is not like the Empire, right? It's not trying to consolidate power too much, although this is my Mothra, but not it's trying to not have any one part of the galaxy be dominantly more important than the others,
Mhm.
as best they can. Whereas in The Mandalorian, having it on Coruscant or having those moments on Coruscant is saying, it's the New Republic acting a bit like the Empire, with the brainwashing and the and not being vigilant enough against the Emperor with Ilya, what's her name being there, and so again, it's what's the story telling us,
Mhm.
what's the story
Well, I think
telling
funny
the fact
enough.
that there are,
Okay.
I mean, just the fact that there are still New Republic institutions on Coruscant. I mean, that's saying, oh yeah, there's practical, like in Ahsoka, how all the Corellian employees just from the Empire, they just changed over practicality, but also tell the story of how the Beaumont Kin thing, how if you're not vigilant, this thing can come back.
Well, I think that New Republic's really enough a great example because I feel like a sad combination of just blowing it up in Force Awakens, and some of the lines in earlier seasons of Mandalorian. I feel like the fandom has sort of taken to say that Star Wars' take on the New Republic is it's a failure, it's a joke, ignore it completely, and we have all this discourse all the time. And some of that could just be balanced out, but like, and something you always talk about, like, yeah, let's show some pro New Republic stories. It's
Show
funny
more
enough we got
Chandrilla.
Skeleton Crew, or we might even get in this movie if my
Mhm.
theory of the New Republic actually comes to the rescue at the end,
Yeah.
help Din out. It's like, and then you can kind of do your in-universe text of like,
Yep.
culminating all these
Mhm.
all these stories, and then be like,
Mhm.
okay, New Republic, was it good? Was it bad? I, Beaumont Kim, I'm gonna write my essay saying
Yeah.
this is what I think the New Republic
In this
was.
essay, I will. Yeah.
Again, it's like a fact of
Mhm.
of real life countries, right? Like this country existed from, I don't know, let's say 1922 to 1991. What are my thoughts on it? Here's the history, and read 20
Mhm.
histories because you're gonna get a different
Yeah.
answer each time. But yeah,
Yeah.
It-
Well, I'll say the best parts of the Alex Segura Star Wars run are Bon Mothma and Leia on Chandrilla.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's true.
Most interesting.
That's true. I want to talk about one more thing, and then we can wrap up for the.
Sure.
That's me. I'm people. Oh, here we go. Joel and I always friends. We talk about if with a receipt for a meal that you ate.
Yeah.
You might not remember it, even if the evidence remains, or conversely, you may have not ended up eating your meal. Exactly. But one thing I also kind of want to talk about, because I kind of brought it up, was the Plagueis example with Tales of the Jedi and kind of these Star Wars in text universe books, is the idea of I know, and this is kind of the problem with I call it the informal tier system, because we don't we do kind of still have a tier system to some extent. I do feel like there is still a bias in the fandom, and maybe even within Lucasfilm itself, where I feel like there's a way of thinking where it's like, okay, this is more real than the other thing. And to be fair, that is kind of true, especially before we started to really consider an interconnected canon, where and we talked a little about this when we did our history of Legends, where the Marvel comics of the 70s and 80s, people liked them, and I'm sure they were great. But but I feel like when the 90s books hit, especially the novels at the time, they really wanted to make this feel like, no, this is the real continuation of Star Wars, especially the Thrawn trilogy. The Thrawn trilogy was very much touted as, this is the continuation of Luke, Han, and Leia. This is what happens after Return of the Jedi. It is real. All those wacky Marvel comics with the rabbit and the actor who played Obi-Wan, that wasn't real. This is real Star Wars. Although it gets funny when stuff from the Marvel comics would later come into the book section. And it's actually kind of interesting, just in terms of tone and feel and just bias, that I feel like people obviously treat the on-screen stuff as quote unquote real Star Wars. Especially the live action stuff, obviously. Animation, it's weird how we talked about how the Clone Wars can be seen as Republic propaganda, even though we're still using the Clone Wars style. So I kind of feel that kind of loses that theory kind of loses itself after after maybe Bad Batch and Maul, which I don't think you can say is Republic propaganda. It's just here's just a very stylized animation.
True.
Trailer. Yeah. And it's weird where people always treat the books a little closer to this is the real thing, like the movies. And people to this day, I still feel treat maybe the comics at the bottom end of sort of no, these are maybe these happen, but I don't know if these are wackier adventures. Because I always do feel like the comics, especially, both, maybe with the exception of stuff like Ostrander stuff, but I do feel like both the Marvel comics of today and even some of the earlier Dark Horse stuff got into those wackier things where, funny enough, we did do Clone Palpatine, so I guess we can't say that, but, we had Clone Palpatine came back in the clone body, and then I love Tales of the Jedi. It's great, but it's very it's got a stylized, the Jedi and the Sith are very sorcery in that way, even compared to a more, let me put it this way, I think I got a better word for it. I feel like the movies and especially live action movies are probably the most grounded Star Wars gets. The books are a little bit more grounded. They can definitely get some wild stuff, but the books I feel like have always stayed a little more grounded. Video games, again, from what we've gotten so far, have remained somewhat grounded, but with some more interesting stuff. It's really the animated side of things, and then the comics that can get wild. I feel like the animated side still remains a little more grounded, but the comics, we got energy-eating vampires.
I have two words for you.
Yeah.
Mortis.
Yeah.
Afra.
Yeah, that's why I said animated stuff does touch on those things, certainly.
Yeah. And comics were the exact perfect medium. Yeah, there's a great example, right? But comics were the exact place you could tell all these wild, wacky Chelly Afra and a basically force fungus ghost, right? Or even the that vampire story that wasn't very well received, But if you're going to take that kind of swing, you're going to put it in a comic book, because also comic books have that kind of history of going there. But it's this visual medium, which you really need a visual medium for that kind of thing, to really at least give it some sense of what's happening, right? And what it looks like. But also, yeah, even Barnabas Vim and Wreath and all that stuff. Yeah, some of going the even earlier stuff, that's an echoes of no, Tears of the Nameless, the novel, the YA novel. But yeah, Echoes of Fear, and this whole thing with the Echo Stones. Yeah, it's a comic book, because you can push the envelope there. Yeah, we could talk about Marvel and Dark Horse declining sales, but you'd still take more of those risks. Whereas, yeah, novels. I mean, think about a novel and a film and a live action series. At least with in terms of a film live action, especially the budget stakes and the production stakes have to be so. I mean, the cost of it is so much at stake that you have to be so organized and logistics of production.
And I'm not saying the live action stuff is just like super is realistic. I mean, we got Night Sisters and stuff like that now. But
what I mean is, maybe that's a medium being a message, the medium being message, a pressure to make it more grounded, to make it more commercially acceptable. Yeah.
Grounded for the movie, what's about to have a baby Yoda be its main character for a good chunk.
Or, about how the greatest space wizard hero becomes the greatest space wizard villain. Is my favorite film of all time. And so, and to say, with a novel, for example, you have to really be extremely conscious of, because there's just so much detail and so many moving parts. That's another thing with a lot of detail, makes it feel a lot more grounded. So many moving parts, you have to be so careful with your plotting. And that's why, I mean, and not to say that wild creative swings in comic books aren't careful with plotting. It's just that it
all you need is your script and your pen, and then you can do whatever.
But they're still careful with plotting and setup and payoff. But what I mean is, that much of detail in a novel gives a more of a sense of world building. So, for example, I just finished John Scalzi's Interdependency trilogy, and I mean, things that he sets up in the first novel pays off in the third, for example, right? Like, just things that are just so brilliantly thought out and planned out, that you have to be, for the novel to work, you have to be incredibly disciplined with that. And that gives us a sense, because in our real world, our real lives, we're trained, we're wired to see to see our lives as narratives, and maybe what we're getting at with history is cause and effect, right?
I could get an answer.
And so that's the thing is, you have to be so careful with cause and effect. Again, you do in a comic book, but of course, if you have a 5-issue comic book, then you can reset afterwards. That Marvel, I mean, the IDW, by and large, anything again after 2014, especially especially the hyperspace stories, High Republic Adventures Phase 1, all those comics are canon.
I'll answer it by saying they're canon, but I feel like I'll be very curious to see if a specific story ever gets mentioned in like one of the, in a Chris Kimshaw.
No, I doubt that.
But compared to like the Marvel comics getting an entire chapter devoted to them in Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, I will say though, this gets into something I think that was also kind of talked about as well, is this idea of like, and this is why I love the Star Wars Tales stories. They were quasi-canon, where it's like, and this is, I think the closest we have to this are the black, white, and red stories, where they're canon.
And the fact povs.
And the fact povs, fact povs. I think black, white, and red are a little bit more. what I think is a better example of this to some extent as well,
Mhm.
where they're canon in that they're not officially under a different label, like say
Mhm.
Visions is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're so stylized and exaggerated stories, like Darth Vader versus a monster mutant
Yeah.
that was created in a lab. It's not going to really affect anything moving forward. It's
Mhm.
just a wild Vader story or a wild Boba story. I mean, you can still tell some deep stuff like that. It's sort of like how I
Yeah.
talked to you earlier about how there's a Star Wars comic from Tales of Star Wars or Star Wars Tales
Mhm.
where Vader fights Maul, but it's not
Yeah.
Darth Maul. It's like this illusion thing that a
Mhm.
Sith cult created to deal with Vader. And Maul fights, and Maul and Vader fight each other, and
Mhm.
then Vader wins. It's like it's canon because it was canon because it wasn't part of a different label, but it's not like it's telling some sort of ongoing storyline that's gonna
Right.
affect things past, present, future. It's just a wild Vader tale
Mhm.
that happened.
Yeah. Um.
So
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, well, talk about the IDW comics still. I mean, but here's the thing, though. Well, first of all, High Republic Adventures Phase 1 definitely things. Phase 3 picks up on that. Also, I mean, um, you could pick something up. An author could pick something up from those IDW comics, and you wouldn't need like story group approval. Say, oh, we're bringing something from Legends back in.
Right.
So, there's that bit. I mean, just the license went back to Dark Horse for the all ages.
It's
Or-
funny
yeah.
that sort of stuff actually happened in like the final years of Legends when like
Mhm.
Luminaya came back in the Legacy. I think it's
Mhm.
Legacy of the Force books. I always get some
Mhm.
of those mixed up, but because he was like a Marvel character who was just sort of
Right.
like, here is one of Vader's many
Yeah.
apprentices that he had because we didn't know about the rule of two and thought Vader just had a bunch of followers and Force users. And
Mhm.
then we brought her into the books, and then we kind of. And here's the thing about grounding. Okay, so it's like she was in the early Marvel comics.
Mhm.
It's sort of like I don't think they called her a Dark Lady of the Sith back then. She was
Mhm.
just like a Vader acolyte.
Sure.
And she's kind of like the wackier stylized Marvel. We then decide to bring her into the modern expanded universe at the time,
Mhm.
and through the books, we kind of solidify her backstory a little bit more. We kind of smooth over some of the more wackier details of
Mhm.
like, well, how come Vader had all these apprentices and people, and it's like, oh well, Vader had trained a bunch of people loyal to the Empire. They were all Emperor's Vader hands, and we kind of fill in some lore. So we're trying to like ground it in a more what Star Wars is at the time compared to
Mhm.
just like
Yeah.
throw in a bunch of wacky people that Vader and the Emperor trained up
Yeah.
during that time. Like here's one guy with a robot eye who
Mhm.
was a Force user and Vader's apprentice.
It sounds like the Inquisitorius now, a little bit.
I mean, it kind of was at the
A
time.
little bit, yeah.
I mean, and the
Yeah.
Inquisitorius is actually a thing
Yeah,
going
it is
back,
in Legends too,
and
yeah.
it's sort of like canon version. It's just sort of like here's a
Mhm.
more grounded version of that.
Yeah. I mean, what was I gonna say? Legend. Oh yeah, with novels also, the more time you take with something, the more. I mean, that's the thing with the original trilogy. Doesn't really feel like fantasy to me anymore. That's the weird thing, right? The more time you have with something, the more it imprints on your brain. And a novel, you spend a lot more time with someone, right? Depending on
You
how
can
long
flesh out things too.
you can flush things out, um, dig in. So that's another thing that makes a novel feel more grounded. A film locked in for 2 hours, right? Right there, or a TV show like Ahsoka feels such a real grounded character because we got so much time with her, right? So that's another thing with medium and groundedness. Of course,
But
Ahsoka's an animated character. We're only now getting her in live action.
But
But yeah,
to kind of go back to the original topic, I think we got a little off track for
yeah.
a hot
Oh,
second.
we went all over the place. Sure.
But to kind of go back to the in-universe text
Mm.
idea and kind of this
Mhm.
idea of meta narratives, I
Mhm.
think that's when doing these in-universe collective texts, these historical in-universe texts, these lore
Mhm.
texts that are in-universe, you can kind of again play at that idea of like, there's a lot like you can like all those wackier comics or stories where it's like,
Yeah,
there was like you could say like during Luke's
true.
adventures, there was once a tale about he and Dr. Aphra, fact,
Hmm.
were in a palace of vampire sucking force people. Was this real?
Right.
We're not sure. Luke himself was like uncertain of their true
Hmm.
identity, but that was the best way he could describe them at the time.
Right.
So like you can say like, yeah, some version like this book can like that wants to ground
Right.
all these stories could be like, yes, Aphra and him were in
Hmm.
a weird palace, and there were these weird force users who
Yeah.
sucked vampires, who or kind of grounding it again in more Star Warsiness. Sort of like how, funny enough, they retconned the villain in the Ewoks movies to
Hmm.
be a Night Sister when she was just a scary witch. It's like, well, actually, no, she was actually a Night Sister who just
Yeah.
found Endor. So
I mean, what's the reasonable explanation versus what maybe the fantastic one? That being said, here's in a serious novel from Punch and Giant Otter and Corner and slept with them.
and
Well, all
it's
right.
true. It's true. It's true. By the way,
Yeah.
Red, speaking of Core and Horn, I've actually been continuing my Rogue Squadron read through of book
Mhm.
one. It's really great. You
Yeah.
should again, Matthew, if you ever once you're done with Alpha Squadron, read Rogue Squadron.
Yes.
It's a New Republic story. It's very cool because you get some dynamics of how like there are like rebel generals or Republic generals who are trying to like take credit for missions and like
Mhm.
trying to like take the glory, and it's like their pilots are like, what's going on? And it's like there's lots of politicking. But anyway,
Nice. Yeah.
off topic. But yeah, I think we've done it for
Yeah.
in-universe text. I think I want more of that if we
Mhm.
are unfortunately going to kind of cheapen, not want to say cheapen, but kind of maybe
Mhm.
make visual dictionaries a little bit more obsolete if they're getting skittish.
Yeah.
I hope not, because I love visual dictionaries. I love just random lore. It's great. I
Mhm.
miss a good old-fashioned source book. Like one little rant from me, and then we're done.
Okay.
I miss the D&D source books because they did a lot of great world building. Like again, that's where
Mhm.
half of the empire that we know and love or lose, or
Mhm.
love in an evil sense.
Well, the what are those called again? Like the West End games?
Yeah, the West End Game source book. I mix something like that. Like they did so much good world building. I think that's actually where the
Mhm.
the Declaration of Rebellion comes
Mhm.
from. So that where it's like
Mhm.
that's where the ISB comes from. You want to know where the ISB comes from, Matthew?
Mhm.
It comes from that book.
Yes.
It comes from that book, seeing white officer uniforms and going like, okay, we're gonna create an entire political party and security force for the empire called the ISB. There we
Mhm.
go.
Well,
I miss
Comp
stuff
Nor is the
like
party, right?
yeah, Comp Nor. I miss those sorts of things. Those were fun and cool.
Mhm.
If stuff like if they're getting skittish because of film stuff, I think a meta narrative in universe text like Rise and Fall, like this
Mhm.
Wedge book that Chris Kemshaw is working on, where it's Wedge's memoirs,
Yeah.
where it's like, yes, these are the stories, these
Mhm.
are the collective stories for sure. But here
Mhm.
is my perspective on what happened.
Yeah.
Here are the meta discourse about that,
Mhm.
where it's like, you know, here are the Jedi good, yes,
Mhm.
or are the Jedi, the Jedi existed, but here's what I think of them,
Mhm.
and what they represent, kind of these meta narratives that can be engaging because I think it's like almost Star Wars fans having discussion with themselves, but
Yeah.
also crafting a grounded text of history around them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and here's the thing with those books is they ostensibly meet a need or a desire for an in-universe history,
Mhm.
without tying Lucasfilm the story group's hands or future authors' hands at all, really.
Probably more like future filmmakers' hands.
The future
let's see.
filmmakers' hands, sure,
Yeah.
but also future authors, sure, and teaching back to that first point, teaching people not to necessarily want an in-universe history, but be more interested in the perspectives and ideas, the lore, the canon, and the big ideas of the galaxy far, far away. There you go.
Exactly.
But yeah, sometimes.
The Imperial Museum is fascinating. Oh yeah, I would
Yeah.
love.
I should just read that chapter alone.
Oh,
from-
it's very interesting. It's also
between the
got like
two?
it's got a very
Yeah.
actually, it's very interesting, like their take on the
Yeah.
Clone Wars and how like apparently like the Jedi wanted to install a puppet chancellor, but Darth Vader saved the Emperor and stuff like that. And then
So if I read just that chapter, would it spoil anything for the everything comes before?
I don't know. I haven't gotten to that chapter yet either.
Okay,
But probably to some extent. But I
Yeah.
remember that chapter because it had a very interesting take on the Clone Wars
Yeah.
at the time.
Or maybe I'll read the Wikipedia article just to find out what it is. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Wikipedia does the Forces book. Okay, good. So
Oh no,
read-
and I think maybe I'll make this my final point. It's pretty
Yeah.
self-contained. Red says, "Okay, that's good to know."
Mhm.
Look, I love Wikipedia too. Don't get me wrong,
oh yeah.
but again, I think the problem with this is the problem with a lot of just it's sort of like my problem today with people who just watch TikToks or videos about history. And look,
Yeah.
I love a good video essay. I love
Right.
a good video podcast.
You send me them all like once a week.
I know, right? But at the same time, I like to think that I try to, or when I have time, I try to do more, right? I try to do more.
Yeah.
Like again, like I brought up the Soviet Union. Like you don't really learn anything about the Soviet Union unless you read like 5 other books, and even then, I don't think you know everything. Like like you read, watch a little essay to like get the basics down. Depending on who you're watching, of course. But read books, go deeper, and that's my problem with like I feel like fiction again, where it's like it's cool to read the Wikipedia article on Thrawn or Jason Solo, but you can't really say I'm a Jason Solo fan unless you've read some of his stories, which unfortunately I've met some people who say like I love Jason Solo, like especially in that kind of condescending like screw the new canon and whatnot.
Mhm.
And look, if you like the new canon, if you like the old canon more than the new canon,
Yeah.
fine. I'm there for you, man. But it's when you meet these people online who are like they clearly have never read a Legends book in their life, and it's like it's like they've only probably read the Wikipedia articles. Like, but you're not engaging with the material. You're not seeing the nuance and the story being told. Like you don't know anything about the character. Like it'd be like if I said I love Batman because I've only read the Wikipedia article of Batman and never watched a Batman or read a Batman thing
Or
in my life.
the DCpedia or whatever it is.
I know,
I mean,
right?
'cause
Like,
that's the thing, like a story. To keep going with the conversation here,
right.
like you can say Wikipedia, you can say again facts about a person,
Mm-hmm.
but a story is the closest thing we can get to sitting down and having conversation with a fictional character telling you about your life. Right, you're meeting a person. We talk about books being transported to another world, right? I mean, that's the real appeal of space opera, of sci-fi, right? Is imagining something different. And George Lucas imagined something that, again, in a lot of ways is very much rooted in our own world, and in a lot of ways is nothing like our own world.
Exactly.
And it's the interaction between the two that we that we love so deeply, and of course the characters within them. So
I mean, heck, our Red's favorite character is Wedge. I read in the comic. Like I like Wedge, and I'm learning more about Wedge not because I'm reading his Wikipedia article, because I'm reading Rogue Squad, and I'm getting to see the actual character in action, do his thing. And Wedge is a pretty cool guy.
So there we go. And then the characters themselves. Again, Reith, reading about Barnabas Fim, he's getting to know, like he learns his story. That's the thing. He just doesn't find facts. He learns a story, and he's able to retrace his footsteps. And that's part of what Reith learns to be himself there. So ultimately, it all comes back to Reith Silas. This is what I'm getting. No, I'm just kidding. There we go. But yeah, Joel, I mean, is that a good place to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
All right, that's a good place to wrap it up then. Yes, great conversation. Yeah, they do. But, again, they do the Force's work as well. And it is incredibly helpful. It's great. Here's one thing Wikipedia is great for. Sorry to keep going. Is when I've read a story, to remember what the heck happened.
Oh no, I'm like that too. Like
Yeah.
I will very much like sometimes just like try to
Yeah.
remind myself, okay, what happened? But at least I'm trying to do it in a way where like I know the story's in my brain. I just need something to like trigger it
Yeah,
back into
exactly.
my focus.
And hey, I mean, I love a good Star Wars trivia
Who doesn't?
as much as the next guy. So,
Who doesn't?
there we go. But yeah, that's a good place to finally wrap things up. Great conversation, spinning out of as we do. Didn't have much, just little threads, and then we just went all over the place. It was great. Thanks for joining us, everyone in the comments down below. Comments aren't going anywhere. Keep our comment boxes ain't going anywhere. Feel free to let us know what you thought. What are you looking forward to in Mando Grogu, and
All Shadow Lord.
yeah, and Maul Shadow Lord, and everything coming down the pipe. Please do give this video a like and a share and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and check us out also on Spotify and Apple, wherever you get your audio podcasts. Joel, another great classic Iron Canon deep dive. Thanks again for guiding us through it. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID20234 on Blue Sky, JID20234 on Blue Sky. Of course, you can follow us at the Ion Canon .bisky.social. We are also, of course, on the Discord, the SWU Discord. We're watching Maul Shadow Lord, and hopefully once we're done with Maul Shadow Lord, we'll go back to some game nights, and we'll then hopefully be all ready for Mando and Grogu. I'm sure we'll have lots of fun discussing and whatnots as well.
Did you guys finish your rewatch of the Mandoverse, or at least of the Mandalorian?
And unfortunately, we only got up to season 2, which I'm kind of
Okay.
low-key okay with, to be quite
That's
honest.
fine.
But,
Yeah, fair enough.
but no, unfortunately, I know Dominic's doing his whole thing.
You can
It's
read the Wikipedia article. Wikipedia
Yeah.
articles, just to jog your memory. There we go. Yeah.
I bet you some people are going to do that for the movie if it's
Yeah.
if it's standalone as it's trying to be. With like,
Yeah, fair enough. Remember, yeah, Dom's working his way through Ahsoka now, but there we go. Yes, so yeah, check all that out. You can follow my personal Instagram at MNUG1138. It's also my Blue Sky and my Threads and whatever, but I'm on Instagram is where I'm mainly at. You can follow, of course, the Tractor Beam comics reviews this Wednesday. Also, that Tractor Beam Blue Sky, Tractor Beam, the Tractor Beam.biscuit.social. We're doing Echoes of the Empire #1, and then still want that up, Joel. Joining the podcast area. Oh, did it automatically go away? Did I just blame you for nothing? Sorry.
what happened?
No, it automatically went away. I thought you clicked off, but no.
Oh no, I didn't click on anything. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, never mind. There we go. Doing Echoes of the Empire #1 and talking about Maul Shadow Lord, because there's only one comic book, so we're gonna talk about this great story about this formerly dead, an ex-dead Sith Lord. Sure. Yeah. So join Chris Abbott and myself this Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network, and then coming right up next week, as I teased kind of near the beginning there, we're going to talk about galactic governments. How does the Empire function when the army is not there?
How do you even run a galaxy? Like how? Yeah. Like I'm going to ask a question. Is when is the country or government too big?
Well, you see, when I was this is what I'm going to lead off with, is the last time I did the tourist thing in Washington, D.C., I saw the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Half the national mall is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm like, why? Why is this centralized? Why aren't the states handling agriculture? Anyway, that's an interesting question for another time. We'll get to it next week. Good old poli-sci discussion for you coming down the pipe. But Joel, until then, let's blow this thing and head home.